We've talked about preparing you for your season. Now let's talk about preparing you for the individual games that you're going to take part in. What do we do for our pregame warm-up? Some of the things, coaches, that we think are obvious and we assume our players understand are very often things we need to go into more detail. The first thing we need to remember is to stretch out properly. Many pitchers don't take enough time to stretch themselves out properly, both their legs and their arms. And this is very important. The second thing that we need to make sure our pitchers are doing is starting overhand when they warm up. It's important to get the muscles moving in both directions, get the arm loosened up as much as possible, both overhand and underhand. And that's the third thing we're going to do. We're going to start loosening up slowly underhand. And while we're working slowly, and just warming up, we're concentrating on making sure our mechanics are where they need to be, making sure our timing is down. We're gradually building speed. While we're still throwing slowly, we need to work on all the spins of the different pitches, just to refresh our memory, to get our wrists loosened up and working properly. Now, when we actually start throwing hard underhand, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, whenever possible, you want to try to use a game ball. If you can get your hands on the game ball before the game, you want to see some balls are bigger than others or feel bigger to you. Some feel a little bit heavier. Some have bigger seams or smaller seams. And whenever possible, you want to get yourself used to the game ball. Coaches, I think it's imperative that the catcher who's going to be catching for them in that game warm the pitcher up. I think it's very important that they take the time before the game to get used to each other. Another thing you might try to do in that pregame warm-up is you might try to go and use your warm-up from the same angle that the pitching mound is going to be on that field. In other words, if there's going to be wind that's going to affect the pitch, you want to throw from the same direction or angle that the mound is to home plate. So whenever possible, we can get used to the field or the weather conditions that might be involved. When you're throwing with your catcher, make sure that you throw all of your pitches. I was very surprised to find out there's a lot of pitchers who never throw changeups before the game to get their changeup warmed up when they're actually going to try and use it in the game. If there's any pitch that you think you might use during the game, make sure you spend time warming it up before that game starts. With your warm-up, make sure you try to time the warm-up so that you finish about 5 to 10 minutes before that game starts. If you finish any sooner than that, by the time the game starts, the warm-up wouldn't have paid off at all. You're going to be tightened up already. The sweat is going to have worn off. If you finish any closer to the game than that, you're still going to be a little bit out of breath by the time it's time for you to go out on the field. Give yourself about 5 minutes so you can sit down, put your jacket on, keep yourself warm, but at least catch your breath before you step out there on the field. Now, that's what a pitcher does if she's a starting pitcher for the game. What do we do in the case of being a relief pitcher in the game? Well, many of those things are the same, but the timing for those things are going to be just a little bit different. If you're the relief pitcher, you might have to check yourself carefully as far as the time that you want to go out and start your warm-up. If you may not be coming in till about the third inning, you've gone through some of those warm-up procedures slowly before the start of the game. You've gotten your stretching out of the way. You've gotten your overhand throwing out of the way. You've warmed up underhand slowly, but maybe you don't want to throw full speed. So in that case, you might want to wait till the inning starts to get tougher or you see the other pitcher struggling a little bit before you go out and start to warm up at full speed a little bit more. You have to time that and go according to what works best for you. Some pitchers take 10 minutes to warm up, some take 2 or 3, some take 20 minutes. Now, there might be certain situations you want to get yourself warmed up for. If, for example, you're coming into the game with the bases loaded, you might want to practice throwing a lot of drop balls and make sure your drop ball is prepared so when you come in the game, you can keep the ball low and your infielders are going to be able to help you out and stop the run from scoring. If, for example, you're going to come into a bunt situation, you might want to work on rise balls to make sure your rise is prepared and they're not going to be able to bunt the ball and move the runner. Right, so those are some of the things you need to take into account if you're a relief pitcher. Time yourself properly, but relief pitchers, be ready at all times. The main thing is you're there to help your team in whatever capacity you can. And whether you like being a reliever or not, you be ready to come in when your team needs you.